What is going on, people? What's good? Competitive sniping versus e-sniping. What was better? Now, this will be part of a wider series. I find no one covers e-sniping, and I think there is a lot to unpack there and, you know, to talk about. If you were or are a competitive sniper, I will explain the differences between e-sniping and competitive sniping later in the video if you weren't about when it was at its peak. Now, we'll format this as usual. We'll argue points for both, and then I will come to a conclusion at the end about it. But to start, we'll talk about competitive sniping. I honestly think, you know, and I see the arguments already, where we can have it in the comments section, I don't mind. But I think from a skill-based point of view, I think competitive sniping was, you know, was where the better snipers were. I'm not gonna lie, because without hard scoping, you can't deny it. It made for the better snipers. You had to be accurate, and you had to be able to place yourself in positions to get these shots off as best you could. And then, you know, going on from that, I think it was more entertaining. You know, when I go back and watch the videos for both, I just think I think the pace was faster, you know, because of the lack of hard scoping. And there was spawn delay in e-sniping. Although not ages, I found it did sometimes take away from the pace. Although I do understand why it was there. It was the more professional approach, in my opinion. Competitive sniping, you know, from start to finish, when you talk about how long it was established. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is when I played and when I seen it and when I can find the oldest comp videos. From start to finish, and I say finish because I'm talking about when it was in its peak, was 5 years from COD 4 to Black Ops 2. Now, I understand it's still going on now in smaller communities, but I was just talking about, you know, the peak, 5 years. You know, rules were established, teams were established, recruitment processes were established, whether you agreed with it or not. You know, in e-sniping, you had to have your teams ready and sent out, you know, a few days before, and you wasn't able to change your roster. With comp, you could literally recruit someone on a day and go straight in. So, you know, I understand the differences between both. I do. Now, you know, when you're talking about how long it was established, you just cannot deny the longevity. Like, e-sniping came and went in a flash, literally. Like, it popped off really quickly, and it was on an upwards trajectory, and then it just went. And, you know, I did have some, you know, regret about this when I went to university. I'm not gonna lie, because, you know, when I went through central London and everything, I seen esports banners on the London buses, and, you know, back then the esports and e-sniping banners were the same color scheme, similar. And I left at the height of e-sniping, so I was like, man, shit, like, what if, you know? Come back all these years later to find out it came and went in a flash, like it was just gone. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird when you look back and regret versus what actually happened. Now, I'll explain the differences between e-sniping and competitive sniping as we go into talk about e-sniping. Now, which I covered briefly before, hard scoping was permitted, so there was no requirement for you to quickscope. You could stay in your scope as long as you wanted. The game modes were, and only were, hardpoint, capture the flag, and search and destroy. In comp, you could pretty much play any game mode with the exclusion of search and destroy. Friendly fire was permitted, spawn delay was 5 seconds, and there was differences between the way that both were run, which I will get into in a moment, but for now, let's argue e-sniping. E-sniping did feel more inclusive, and I do think that's down to the fact that you could hard scope. You know, you had a lot of teams popping up where you didn't really see before, and trying different things and trying to navigate around the maps differently. It also, you know, made a lot of new countries start popping up as well. If I speak to the EU, there was a lot of teams or players we'd never seen before in what was a UK dominated thing, to be honest. You could also put that down to the fact that there was money and land starting to pop up everywhere, and with that, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the evolving of sniping within the EU anyway. I don't know about the NA, but, you know, when these players started popping up, taking it seriously, like proper seriously, with scuff controllers, it looked like a bunny had taken a line of coke, like bouncing around everywhere. It's not something we'd really ever seen before. And, you know, you'd either get smoked or adapt around it and improve your movement that way. They also had a lot of traction, honestly. I feel like this is down to the fact that they contacted or were noticed by the correct people. You know, you had MLG and Game Battle start to stream these matches, you know, whereas, you know, as a scene, we still had a lot of views and we were known, but we didn't quite, you know, bridge that gap to go to the MLG. So that was good to see, and that was really good for the scene. And where we were managed on YouTube, really, comp was run on YouTube pages and Google Docs. They had a dedicated website, and if you add the fact that, you know, they had the backing from MLG and Game Battles with their site as well, it was a really good and really, you know, more professional way to manage everything. Now, I will say, the language barrier was a problem. That was a problem, because it was run, you know, the management were French, and you know, there'd be times honestly where I'd stop a game and I'd contact them and be like, listen, the other team were cheating, so I've had to end the game. And they're like, yes, right. So I filmed it. What do you want to do about it? Yes. What the fuck do you mean yes? Like, do something about it. Like, do something about it. Bloody hell. But you know, with all that, I will say, I mean, I am slightly biased, although I'm trying to be as objective as I can. I do think comp was better overall to watch and for the highest level of sniping, as well as its stability, which I've said earlier. But I will say e-Sniping was better for the growth and development of the scene. It was more inclusive and more professional, you know, minus the fact that English wasn't their greatest point. Although they did add e-Sniping English, you know, towards the end, but it was, you know, too little, too late for that by then. If you played both, which did you prefer? If you didn't play both, do you think you'd prefer the other one? And also, this last question, I'd like to get to the bottom of, because I wasn't in the scene anymore, you know, during this period. But what happened to e-Sniping? It's such an interesting case of what could have been. Cool? If you want to watch more competitive sniping talks, click the playlist here. In a bit.